The memo that we mentioned before, that basically has been issued to the leadership in Washington, says that there exists a science that an enemy of the United States could get a hold of, in which he could manipulate physical and cognitive environments around us in order to penetrate U.S. facilities, influence decision makers, and to compromise national security. And notice the sub-bullets underneath there. They got psychotronic weapons? My goodness gracious. You know, I suspect what they mean by that is a weapon that you could point at somebody to change their mind or make them do something psychologically. Psychotronic weapons. Well, you know, this entity might be not actually need a weapon. Maybe it can just do that mentally. Maybe so, maybe not. But I guess they're afraid that, like, China and Russia might actually build a weapon, a physical weapon, psychotronic, that could go into our heads and change what we're thinking. It's possible. They're looking at it. Cognitive human interface. My goodness. Some kind of machine that can interface with our cognitive realities in our brain. They're looking at that too. And they're afraid that somebody else will come do it before they get done with it. Penetration of solid surfaces. My goodness, that means opening up something and then closing it back up. Stepping through a wormhole. You know, some of the unpublished phenomena that occurred on the Skinwalker Ranch would be interesting to point out at this point. When they filmed an orb getting close to one of the farmhouses on Skinwalker, they filmed it with ultraviolet cameras, and so that you could see things that the human eye couldn't see. The camera evidently showed what they called a three-dimensional tunnel. A three-dimensional tunnel where you could actually look into the tunnel and see it go off into the distance. And out of that tunnel climbed a humanoid, an 8-foot tall, black presence, red eyes, and ran off into the woods. Hung on to the end of the tunnel, dropped to the ground, ran off into the woods, and then the tunnel closed up and the orb disappeared. Wow. Huh. Isn't that interesting? Penetration of solid surfaces even. Instantaneous sensor disassembly. I'm sure that refers to some of the destructive things that occurred on Skinwalker, where their cameras would not work all of a sudden, or all of a sudden become inactive or break, literally fall apart, disassembly. So they're suggesting that an enemy of the United States could be able to do this. Well, it appears that at least on Skinwalker, there is a power, there is an entity that can do this invisibly without any problems whatsoever. Alternation or manipulation of biological organisms? My goodness, what is that? That means a shapeshifter. Wow, some biological organism that can be one organism with this minute and a totally different organism the next minute. Isn't that frightening? This is the DoD chart, ladies and gentlemen. Anomalies in the space-time construct. My goodness. Einstein said that, space and time are the same thing. It's just a matter of which one you want to use as a variable. And if it's space, that means you can step through a wormhole and go from one space in the universe to the next space in the universe, just stepping over. But he also said that time's the same way. If you don't want to use space as your variable, use time as your variable. You could step from today till 100 years from today just by going through the wormhole. That's mathematically proven by Albert Einstein. So what are they talking about here? Anomalies in that. What does that mean? That means things that mess up that construct. Can't imagine what that might mean. But it frightens them to think that somebody could mess with the space-time continuum. Unique cognitive human interface experiences. They're afraid that there can be some kind of an interface to our brain that perhaps can take it over or do things with it. Not sure, but it's scary. But then by the same token, the DoD under DoD advantages kind of brags a little bit and say that, hey, you know, we've looked at some of these experiences ourselves in the past. You know, we've been there and done some of this stuff, and we know a little bit about it. And they're also saying that we have relationships with academics. We've got large libraries of academic reports and on subject matters like invisibility and space-time continuum and time travel and all kinds of things like that. They've asked the academic world to report back and tell them all about that. They've got that information. And they're also saying that the DoD controls several facilities, so there's more than just the Skinwalker Ranch. There's all kinds of other places around the world that report perhaps some kind of a wormhole or some kind of a, an opening where something comes and goes at will. Very interesting. Where activities have been detected. They've seen this kind of thing. And lastly, they point out that this thing they're dealing with, this phenomena, seems to be more associated with quantum physics than it does Newtonian physics. What we mean by that is, Newtonian physics, if you have a particle, you know where it is and you know how to get to it, and you know how to measure it. Not true in quantum physics. Quantum physics, at best, will tell you where the particle might be, but it certainly never tells you where the particle is, or even really that the particle exists. In some cases, it might even suggest that it's not a particle. It's a wave. It's an energy wave that's connected to everything else in the universe. My goodness, so interesting stuff. So they're suggesting that this thing we're looking at could be much more along the lines of a quantum physics solution than a Newtonian physics solution. So that's where we stand, ladies and gentlemen. The DoD is afraid. They are concerned. They know some things, and a lot of things they're not telling us. And a lot of the things that scare them, they're not telling us, because they feel if they tell us, it's like telling our enemies, and telling our enemies where our vulnerabilities are, which they certainly don't want to do that. So, in conclusion, if in fact this entity called E is probing us, we need to get busy. We need to bring the United States citizen into this situation. You need to explain it to us. You need to fess up. Show us what you got. Tell us what you know. Tell us what your concerns are. And let us help you. Let us help you, because we can help.